I never thought I'd be the one to walk out of my childhood home with my bags packed, leaving my parents in tears, accusing me of abandoning them after everything they'd done for me. For 4 years, I'd paid rent to live in the room I'd grown up in. The same pink walls I'd begged for when I was 12, the same creaky floorboard under the bed that used to scare me at night. I'd handed over check after check, thinking I was being responsible, an adult contributing to the household. The day I told them I was moving out, they looked at me like I'd betrayed them. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. As I stood in the doorway with my last box, I handed them an envelope I'd prepared the night before. What was inside changed everything, for them and for me. I graduated from NC State in May with a degree in communications and a resume I had been building carefully since sophomore year. I had done 2 internships, one at a local TV station and one at a marketing firm in Raleigh, and I had networked with the particular anxious energy of someone who grew up in a house where financial uncertainty was a recurring theme and who had decided, very young, that she was not going to live that way. The job offer came in July. A content coordinator position at a mid-sized marketing agency in downtown Raleigh. Not glamorous, not the highest salary I could imagine, but real. Benefits, a 401k with company matching, paid time off, a direct deposit that would land in my account every other Friday, like a small, reliable promise. The salary was $42,000 a year. I remember sitting in my car in the parking lot of the Panera where I had taken the phone call, looking at my phone after I'd said yes, and the recruiter had said she'd send the offer letter over, and feeling something I can only describe as a physical expansion, like something that had been compressed in me for a long time was finally being given room. I called my mom first. She said, "Oh baby, that's wonderful," in the voice she uses when she means it, and I could hear my dad saying something in the background, and her relaying the news, and him saying, "Good, good," which for my father is genuine enthusiasm. I called my best friend Nia second. She screamed into the phone and then apologized to whoever was near her. I drove home feeling like someone who was about to begin something real. I was 22 years old and I had a job and I was living in my parents' house in Cary, and I had plans, the kind of plans that live in the future, just close enough to see but not yet close enough to touch. My own apartment, my own space. Time to save, to build, to figure out the adult version of myself in an environment that was actually mine. I thought I had time. 3 weeks after I started work, my parents asked me to sit down at the kitchen table after dinner. This is a specific thing in my family. The kitchen table is where significant conversations happen. School problems, money discussions, the talk they had with me when I was 14 about my grandmother's health. All of these happened at the kitchen table with the overhead light on and the television turned off, which was the signal that what was happening was serious. I sat down. My mother had her hands folded on the table in front of her. My father had his reading glasses on, which he sometimes wears when he wants to seem formal, and he had a piece of paper in front of him, though I could not see what was on it. He said, "Now that you're working, we need to talk about your situation here." I said okay. He said that they had been thinking about it, and they felt it was important for me to learn the value of contributing to a household. He said that a lot of parents would just let their kids live at home for free, but they did not think that was doing me any favors. He said the world had real costs, and the sooner I understood that, the better off I would be. My mother nodded along to most of this. He said they thought $500 a month was fair for rent. I looked at him, then at my mother. "You want me to pay rent?" I said. "Not a question, just clarifying." "We think it's the right thing," my mother said. "It teaches responsibility, and it's not like we're asking for a lot. You know what rent is in this area. This is very reasonable." It was not a lot compared to market rate. A 1-bedroom in Cary in 2019 would have run me somewhere between $900 and $1,200 a month. $500 was, on its surface, reasonable. But I was 22 and 3 weeks into my first job, and I had student loans and a car payment, and I had been home for exactly the same amount of time I had always been home, doing exactly the same things I had always done, and something about the timing of it. 3 weeks, they had waited 3 weeks after my first paycheck, made the back of my neck feel strange. "Okay," I said. My father slid the piece of paper across the table. It had an amount and a due date on it. He said he would prefer the first of the month, or close to it. I picked up the paper. I folded it. I put it in the pocket of my jeans. "Okay," I said again. I went upstairs to my room and I sat on my bed for a while and I looked at the wall. The first Venmo transfer went through on September 1st at 11:15 in the morning from my phone, sitting at my desk at work during my lunch break. I stared at the confirmation screen for longer than necessary. $500 to Dad. The Venmo note field was empty because I could not think of what to write that would not feel either ironic or sad. My father sent back a thumbs up emoji. I put my phone in my desk drawer and ate my lunch and went back to work. That evening, I sat down with my laptop and made a budget spreadsheet, the kind I had been making versions of since college, but this one was different. This one had the word rent in it, applied to the house where I had lived my whole life. I put in my take-home pay, my student loan payment, my car insurance, my phone bill, my share of the streaming subscriptions I split with Nia, my gas, my groceries, and $500 labeled rent home. What was left after all of it was not nothing, but it was less than I had imagined. It was enough to save, slowly. It was not enough to save quickly. I adjusted my timeline in my head. I had been thinking I could have enough for a deposit and first and last month's rent on my own place within a year. Maybe 18 months. Now I recalculated. 2 years if I was careful. Maybe 2.5. I closed the laptop. I told myself it was fine. I told myself my father was right, that it was teaching me responsibility, that I was learning real financial discipline, that this was normal in many families, that my parents were not doing anything wrong. I told myself all of these things, and I was not wrong about any of them, and it still felt like something I could not quite name. By October, it was a routine. First of the month, Venmo transfer, $500. My father's thumbs up emoji arriving within the hour, reliable as a receipt. I went to work 5 days a week. I was good at my job in the way I had always been good at things I put effort into. Thorough, organized, better at deadlines than most of my colleagues, willing to stay late when something needed doing. My manager, a woman named Joelle who had been in marketing for 15 years and who wore reading glasses on a beaded chain and tolerated no vagueness about timelines, told me at my 3-month review that she was pleased. She said I had good instincts. I went home and told no one because talking about work wins in my family had always had a complicated texture. My parents were proud in a way that was adjacent to claiming, the way some parents are proud of their children's achievements, the way they are proud of a thing they own. My days had a shape. Wake at 6:30, shower, coffee from the machine on the kitchen counter, out the door by 7:40. Work, home by 6 or 6:30 depending on traffic. My mother usually had dinner made or something started. My father watched the news. We ate together most nights, which was normal and sometimes even nice. There were evenings when it was exactly what a family dinner is supposed to be, warm and ordinary. Everyone tired in their particular way, the television low in the background. I did my laundry on Sundays. I cleaned my bathroom. I vacuumed my room. I was a good housemate, I think. In addition to being a paying tenant, I saved what I could. I tracked it in a separate row on my spreadsheet, labeled Freedom Fund with a small irony I allowed myself privately. The shift was gradual enough that I cannot point to a single day when it happened. It was more like the way a room gets darker in the evening. You do not notice the exact moment the light changes, only that at some point you realize you are sitting in the dark. I started feeling, slowly and then more consistently, like I was living in someone else's house. It was small things first. My mother rearranged the kitchen, which she had every right to do, but she put things in places that were not where they had always been, and when I could not find the spatula and asked, she said, I reorganized, in a tone that suggested I should have known. I had lived in that kitchen for 22 years. I did not say this. My father made a comment once, when I came home later than expected and the dinner plates were already in the drying rack, that I might want to let them know if I was going to be late. I was 23. I was coming home from a work event. I said I was sorry for not texting and went upstairs. There was an evening when I had a friend over, Nia, whom my parents had known for years, and my father knocked on my bedroom door at 9:30 to ask if we could keep it down because he had an early morning. We were talking, not loudly. I said of course, and we lowered our voices, and Nia looked at me with an expression I recognized. None of these things were extraordinary. Families navigate this territory all the time. The transition between parenting a child and coexisting with an adult, the renegotiation of space and autonomy that happens when everyone is living under the same roof but no longer in the same role. I knew that. I understood the complexity, but I was also paying $500 a month to be there. This was the thing I could not reconcile. The rental arrangement had changed something in the architecture of the house that we had never discussed. I was a tenant, which meant I had the obligations of a tenant, the payment, the respect for the space, the consideration for my landlord's needs. But I did not have what tenants have in exchange for those obligations: the right to my space without interference, the security of knowing the terms were stable, the ability to have a friend over at 9 p.m. without a knock on the door. I was paying for the obligation without receiving the corresponding right. I did not say any of this. I filed it. I went to work. I transferred the money on the first. Year 2 brought a collection of small moments that I want to tell you about because I think the small moments are more honest than the big ones. There was the Sunday morning when I slept in until 10 and came downstairs to find my mother in the kitchen looking at me in a way that communicated, without words, that sleeping until 10 was a choice she had an opinion about. She did not say anything. I made my coffee and she made hers, and we stood in the kitchen and had a pleasant enough conversation, and nothing was said, and the look just sat there between us. There was the week my father was in a difficult mood, work stress, I think, or something between him and my mother that I was not privy to. And the house was tense in the particular way houses are tense when one person's mood saturates all the air. I spent most of that week at the office later than I needed to, and at Nia's apartment on the one day I could manage it, and I felt acutely what it was to have nowhere to go that was unambiguously mine. There was the Thanksgiving when my aunt asked me at the table when I was going to get my own place, in the well-meaning but pointed way that aunts ask these things, and my mother said, "She's saving up," in a tone that was simultaneously accurate, and somehow managed to frame my living at home as primarily a matter of their hospitality, rather than also a paid arrangement. I thought about the Venmo transfers. I thought about the $500 every first of the month for now 2+ years. I ate my turkey. There was the night I was on the phone with Nia in my room, talking through a hard week I was having at work, and my mother knocked and came partway in, without waiting, in the way parents enter rooms they still think of as simply rooms in their house, and I had to end the call earlier than I wanted to. That one stayed with me longer than the others. Not because it was the worst thing. It was not even close to the worst thing. It stayed with me because of what it made visible. I had no door, in any real sense, that was mine. I went back to my spreadsheet that night and looked at the Freedom Fund line. I started adding to it more aggressively. Time moves differently when you are waiting for something. I know this because the first year at my parents' house went slowly. Each month's transfer a discrete event, the savings accumulating in what felt like geological time. By year 3, the payments were automatic, literally and emotionally. I set up an automatic transfer so the $500 left my account on the first without my having to do anything, and this was both practical and also, I think, a form of self-protection. If I did not have to think about it consciously, I did not have to feel the specific feeling that came with thinking about it. I got a raise at work in year 2, and then another in year 3. Joelle promoted me to senior content strategist in the fall of my second year, with a bump in salary that made the arithmetic look better. I increased my retirement contributions. I paid down my student loans ahead of schedule. The Freedom Fund grew faster. My parents did not increase the rent, which I am sure they would point to as evidence of their generosity, and which I am sure is true, and which also meant that the ratio of what I paid to what I earned was shrinking over time, which made the arrangement easier to sustain and harder to leave because it was easier to sustain. This is the mechanism that I did not fully understand until I was inside it. Things that are manageable are hard to leave because you have to choose to leave something that does not, on any given day, feel impossible. You have to decide that good enough is not enough, and that the cost of the status quo is real even when it is not acute. I went on 2 dates in year 2 and 1 in year 3. The dates were fine, nothing developed. Nia said gently and more than once that it was hard to date seriously when you did not have your own space, and she was right, and I did not push back on it because I could not. I had friends over less and less. My bedroom at my parents' house was my entire world, and it was a small world, and after a while I stopped trying to have my outside life inside it. By year 4, I was 26. I had $5,200 in my Freedom Fund, which was what I had been able to save on top of all my other savings and financial goals. I had good credit. I had a stable job. I had, in every external measure, all the prerequisites for a life of my own. I also had $24,000 in rent payments to my parents over 4 years, plus the automatic transfer that had just gone out that morning, sitting in my payment history like a receipt for something I was still trying to understand. It was a Tuesday evening in February when I understood, clearly and without drama, that I was done. I do not mean done in an angry way. I mean done in the way you are done with a phase of your life when you can feel in your body that it has run its course, like the last day of a job you have already resigned from, when you are still doing the work but the work is no longer the point. I had gotten home late from a work dinner. We had a new client, a celebration dinner that Joelle had organized. And I was in a good mood, the kind of mood that comes from a night of professional connection and a glass of wine and the feeling that you are doing something well. I came in through the front door at 10:30 and my parents were already in bed, and the house was dark and quiet, and I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water, and I stood at the kitchen counter in the dark, and I thought, I am 26 years old, and I am standing in the dark in my parents' kitchen at 10:30 on a Tuesday, and I am tiptoeing. I was tiptoeing in the house I had grown up in. In the house I paid $500 a month to live in. I was adjusting my life, the pace and the volume and the schedule of it, around the sleep patterns of my parents. I was doing this automatically, without resentment, in that particular moment, just as a fact of the environment. And it was not their fault. They were asleep at 10:30 because they were in their mid-50s, and they got up early, and that is a reasonable thing. They had not told me to tiptoe. No one had ever said the word. But I was tiptoeing. I drank my water. I went to bed, and the next morning I opened my laptop and looked at apartments. Within 3 weeks I had found one bedroom, one bathroom, a third-floor unit in a building in Raleigh with in-unit laundry, and a small balcony and a parking spot, and a dog-friendly policy which mattered because I had been wanting a dog for 3 years and had not gotten one because it was not my house. The rent was $950 a month. The lease could start March 15th. I paid the application fee. I waited 2 days for approval. When the approval email came, I sat in my car in the parking garage at work and called Nia. I found my place, I said. She was quiet for a second and then she said, finally, with a feeling in it, that told me she had been waiting longer than I had. I told my parents on a Sunday afternoon, 2 weeks before the move-in date. I had thought carefully about when and how. Not because I expected a problem. I want to be honest about this. Because what followed surprised me genuinely. I had thought they might be emotional, might have mixed feelings, might need some adjustment time. I had not expected what I got. I sat down with them in the living room, which is where we have the less formal conversations, the ones that do not require the kitchen table's full ceremony. My mother was on the couch with her book. My father had the television on low. I sat in the chair across from them and I said I had something to tell them. I said I had found an apartment, that I was going to move out on March 15th. That it was close by, 12 minutes, and that I was excited about the next chapter of my life. I said it clearly and calmly and with, I think, appropriate warmth. I was not announcing a departure from their lives. I was announcing a departure from their house, which are different things. My mother put down her book. My father reached for the remote and turned the television off. The silence lasted about 5 seconds. Then my mother said, I didn't know you were looking. I've been thinking about it for a while, I said. You didn't mention it. I wanted to be sure before I brought it up. My father said, what's the rush? I looked at him. I'm 26, Dad. It's not a rush. You're comfortable here, he said. It was not a question. I'm ready to have my own place, I said. My mother looked at my father. Something passed between them that I could not read. March 15th is so soon, she said. It's 2 weeks, I said. I'll help you figure out whatever you need to figure out. My father said, I just don't understand why now. And I said as evenly as I could, because I'm ready. The real reaction came the following Saturday. The 2 weeks between my announcement and the moving day were not comfortable ones. My mother had moved into a mode I recognized, a particular quiet that was not peace, but was the preparation for something, the gathering of feeling before it found its form. My father had been brief with me in a way that was its own kind of statement. I had been packing my room in the evenings, which was both practical, and I could see from their expressions when they passed my doorway, affecting them in a way that was real. On Saturday morning, I came downstairs to find them both in the kitchen, which felt intentional. My mother was standing at the counter with her coffee. My father was at the table. The television was off. My mother started. She said she had been thinking about it all week, and she did not understand why I was doing this to them. She said they had given me a home all these years. They had always been there for me. They had supported me through college, and they had let me live here while I got on my feet, and they had not asked for much. And now that I was leaving, it felt like I was turning my back on them. I want to quote her as precisely as I can, because the word she used matters. She said it felt like I was abandoning them. My father said that the apartment was more expensive than what I was paying here, which was true, and that I was making a financial decision that did not make sense on paper, which was true in a narrow way, and that he hoped I was not making an emotional decision, by which I understood he meant that he hoped I was not leaving because of something they had done, which he framed in a way that made any acknowledgement that they had done something inadmissible. My mother said she had not raised me to leave. I sat at the kitchen table and I listened to all of it. I let it land without deflecting it, because I think there was real feeling in it. They were not performing. They genuinely felt in that moment that something was being taken from them. I said, "I'm moving 12 minutes away. I'm not leaving your lives. I love you both. This is just something I need to do." My mother said, "I just think you could have talked to us before you signed anything." I said, "I'm talking to you now." My father said, "You've made up your mind." "Yes," I said, "I have." He stood up and said he had things to do. He walked out of the kitchen. My mother looked at me with an expression that combined hurt and reproach and something deeper underneath both of them that I did not have a name for. I went back upstairs to finish packing. The next week I learned something about silence that I had not known before. I had always thought of silence as an absence, the absence of noise, of conflict, of engagement. What I discovered that week is that silence can be a presence. It can fill a room the way smoke fills a room. Invisible but pervasive, changing the quality of the air, making you aware of your own breathing. My parents were not cruel to me that week. They did not yell or give me ultimatums. They were simply, and I can only describe it this way, removed, present in the house, available in a technical sense, but not quite there in the way they had been before. Conversations were brief and functional. The dinners, which we still shared most evenings, had a different temperature. I did not respond to this strategically. I did not try to draw them out or smooth things over with extra warmth. I was not cold. I was myself, saying good morning, asking about their days, being present at dinner, doing my dishes. I just did not perform a guilt I did not feel, because I did not feel guilty. This was the thing I kept checking, like you check a wound to see how it's healing, and kept finding the same answer. I did not feel guilty. I felt sad that they were hurting. I felt the particular grief of watching people you love fail to see something clearly. But I did not feel guilty for the decision I had made. I had lived in their house. I had paid for the privilege. I had been a good daughter and a good tenant and a responsible adult for 4 years. I was leaving to live 12 minutes away in an apartment I had earned with my own work. There was nothing in that sequence I needed to be sorry for. I packed boxes in the evenings. I called Nia and we made plans for the actual move. She was going to help, and 2 of my work friends. I bought cleaning supplies for the new apartment and a shower curtain I had picked out carefully. A deep teal that I had wanted for months, and that would look good in the bathroom that was going to be mine. On the last night, I sat at my desk after my boxes were mostly stacked, and I opened my laptop. The spreadsheet I had started in September of year 1, when I set up my budget with the word rent in it for the first time, had been updated every month for 48 months. Every transfer, every date, every amount. $500 first of the month, 48 times. I had not maintained it as evidence. I want to be honest about this because I think it matters to the truth of who I am. I had maintained it because I maintain things. Because I am the kind of person who tracks her finances carefully, who has a spreadsheet for her budget and her savings and her loan payoff schedule, who finds comfort in the legibility of numbers. The spreadsheet was a byproduct of my ordinary habits, but sitting at my desk on that last evening, I opened it with a different purpose. I looked at the total, $24,000. $24,000 over 48 months, transferred on or near the first of every month, a payment history as clean and consistent as any tenant's. I then did something I had not done before. I opened a second tab, and I looked up average rent for a bedroom in a comparable home in Cary, North Carolina in 2019 through 2023. The numbers varied. The market had moved over 4 years, but the average for a room in a shared home, not a standalone apartment, was somewhere between $700 and $900 per month for most of that period. I was not going to make a legal argument. I was not going to file anything or threaten anything or do anything other than what I was planning to do. But I wanted to look at the numbers clearly, because looking at things clearly is what I do, and because I had spent 4 years not looking at this particular thing clearly, and I thought the night before I left was probably the right time to stop averting my eyes. $24,000. At $500 a month, which was below market. For 4 years. I also looked up something else: the average amount American parents set aside for their children's post-college transition savings. The articles and studies varied, but the general theme was consistent. Many financial advisors recommend that parents who charge adult children rent put that money into a savings fund to help the child transition to independent living, essentially using the rent as a forced savings mechanism for the child. Some parents do this explicitly and tell their children. Some do it without saying. It is a practice with a logic to it, a way of honoring both the teaching purpose and the family purpose. I did not know if my parents had done this. I had never asked, because the possibility had never occurred to me until the previous year when I read an article about it at 2 in the morning with the particular attention of someone who recognizes their own situation in what they are reading. I sat with this for a while. Then I opened a new document. I worked on it for about an hour and a half. I was not angry while I worked on it. I was clear, the way I am clear when I am doing something that needs to be done correctly. I checked the numbers twice. I formatted it neatly. I printed 2 copies on the printer in my room, the one I had bought for myself 3 years ago, that I was taking with me tomorrow, and I put one in the folder I had prepared for myself and one in a plain white envelope. I wrote Mom and Dad on the front of the envelope in my regular handwriting. I turned off the light. I went to sleep. Moving morning was a Saturday in March, cold and clear, the sky the pale blue of early spring in North Carolina. Nia arrived at 8 with coffee and her boyfriend Jake, who was large and useful and had offered his truck. 2 of my work friends came at 8:30. We were efficient. I had been packing for 2 weeks. Everything was labeled, the boxes were stacked in the hallway. By 10 o'clock most of it was downstairs. My parents were home. They did not help with the moving, which I had not asked them to do. My mother came out of the kitchen twice while boxes were being carried out, saying brief, polite things to Nia and Jake. My father appeared in the living room doorway at one point, watched for a moment without saying anything, and went back inside. By 11:15 my room was empty. I walked through it one last time. The room I had slept in since I was 5 years old. The room where I had done homework and cried over boys and stayed up too late and talked on the phone and packed for college and unpacked from college and spent 4 years as an adult paying rent. It was just a room now, empty and ordinary. I went downstairs with my last box. My parents were in the living room. My mother was on the couch, which is where she had been when I told her I was leaving, and my father was standing, which is how he stands when he is in a feeling he does not know what to do with. My mother said, "I just still don't understand why you're doing this." I set my box down. I reached into it, past the desk lamp and the notebooks and the teal shower curtain folded on top, and I took out the white envelope. I walked to the entry table, the one by the door where they keep the keys and the mail, where I had placed for 4 years the monthly cash envelope before we switched to Venmo, where the physical habit of the payment had lived. I set the envelope on the table. "This is for you," I said. "You don't have to look at it now, but I thought you might want to have it." My father looked at the envelope. "What is it?" "A record," I said, "of everything." I picked up my box. I looked at both of them. My mother on the couch with her hands in her lap. My father by the bookshelf that held my school photos in their frames. I loved them. I want to say that clearly because it is true and because the rest of what I am telling you is not the opposite of love. It is what happens when love is not enough by itself to make things clear. "I'll call you when I'm settled in," I said. "I love you both." I walked out. Nia was waiting by the truck. She looked at my face as I came down the front steps, and she did not ask anything. She just handed me the coffee cup she had been holding and opened the passenger door. We drove away. I have been in my apartment for 8 months now. The teal shower curtain looks exactly as good as I knew it would. I have a dog, a 3-year-old beagle mix named Harriet from the county shelter, who sleeps at the foot of my bed and whose presence in my home has given me a daily joy I did not know I was missing until I had it. I do not tiptoe. I have had Nia over at 10 on a Tuesday and at midnight on a Friday, and neither required explanation or apology. I am 12 minutes from my parents' house. I call twice a week. I have had dinner with them twice a month, which is more quality time than we had in 4 years of living together, and the dinners are better now, lighter, more real, less loaded with the unspoken weight of a living arrangement nobody was completely comfortable with. My mother called me the evening of moving day. She called after I had been in the apartment for 3 hours, long enough to have the bed made and Harriet's food and water set up and the teal shower curtain hung on its rod. She called and she said in the voice that is her real voice, underneath the managed one, "The paper you left." "Yeah," I said. A pause. "How did you keep track of all of it?" "Spreadsheet," I said. "I've had one since the first month." Another pause. That's a lot of money, she said. I know, I said. We should have. She stopped. Started again. Your father and I talked about it. We put some of it in savings for you, but not all of it. We should have been clearer about that from the beginning. This landed differently than I expected. Not as a vindication, it was too late for vindication to be the point, but as something more useful. As an acknowledgement, as evidence that the envelope had done what I had hoped it would do, which was not to punish them but to make something visible that had not been visible. To take a thing that had existed only in my private accounting and bring it into the shared space where it could be seen and understood. I know, I said. I'm not angry about it. You're sure, she said. I'm sure, I said. I'm really okay, Mom. She said she was glad I was happy in my new place. She said she wanted to come see it when I was settled. I said, yes, come next weekend, I'll make dinner. She came. She brought flowers and a bottle of wine, and she looked around my apartment with an expression I have thought about since, something that contained pride and grief and adjustment. The expression of a woman seeing her daughter's life take a shape she had not anticipated, but recognizes as right. She said, standing in my kitchen, it's very you. I thought about all the ways a thing can be yours. The lease with your name on it, the monthly transfer, the pink bath mat you chose yourself, the dog asleep on the couch in the afternoon light, the knowledge, quiet and accumulated over years, of what things cost and what they are worth and what they mean. My father came the following weekend. He stood in the middle of my living room for a moment and looked at it. Then he looked at me. You did good, he said. From my father, this is a complete sentence. I received it as one. Here is what I know now that I did not know at 22, sitting at my parents' kitchen table with a folded piece of paper in my pocket. There is nothing wrong with parents who ask their adult children to contribute to the household. There is nothing wrong with learning financial responsibility the concrete way, through actual payments and actual budgets. These things can be true, and it is also true that the terms of any arrangement, however practical, shape the relationship inside it. That what you call something, rent, contribution, teaching moment, investment, changes what it is, not just what it is called. That living as a tenant in the house where you grew up will, inevitably, make you feel like a tenant. And that when you have paid for the right to be somewhere, and are still treated as though your presence is contingent on things the payments never covered, the only honest response, eventually, is to stop paying and go build something of your own. The document I left on the entry table was not a bill. It was not an invoice or a demand or a threat. It was a record. A clear, dated, organized record of 48 months of first-of-the-month transfers, of rent paid on time, of an obligation I had honored without complaint for 4 years. It was the only way I knew to say, I was here. I contributed. I paid my way, and I still needed more than this. It was also, I realize now, a goodbye to the version of myself who had waited 4 years to say it. Harriet jumped up on the couch and put her head in my lap, and I let her stay there. Outside, it was a Tuesday evening in November. I was in my own apartment, in my own quiet, with a dog and a teal shower curtain and a spreadsheet I no longer needed to update. I was 26 years old, and I was exactly where I was supposed to be. That turned out to be worth every penny.